I'm helping my son heal from Lyme, Bartonella, and Babesia, and there is hope. So he was developmentally normal until age 8 when he was bitten by a tick in the summer of 2020. So perfect, healthy. But at that point I was like, oh, it's just a little red and I'm gonna put some bentonite clay on it and some essential oils. And I talked to several physicians and they all said, well, you can't get Lyme in South Carolina, you're good to go. It's just like, treat it like a bug bite. So fast forward to November of 2020, he had an emergency appendectomy. And that's when the firestorm started for his body. So what we now think is that the Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella were all being fought off by Whitman's immune system. And when he had the appendicitis and the surgery, it caused a storm in his system that his body could no longer fight. It had to go into fighting that. And so his body just had a really hard time recovering from the surgery. He actually is not really, truly from that surgery on, he was never the same. So that was the beginning of the story. The next day, when he came out of surgery, he was having a lot of chest pain and he was not walking well. And so I kept asking the nurse about it and she kept reassuring me it was normal. And finally I said, I'm gonna need you to call the doctor on call and have them come in because something's not right. And so they came in and they reassured me everything was fine and he was just gonna go home and recover and be just fine. And so we continued on, we brought him home and every day was worse. We were right at Thanksgiving. And so we had Thanksgiving as a family. He couldn't get out of bed. He couldn't eat his food. He tried to eat, he would vomit it. And we ended up going back to see the surgeon the next day, who then sent him for another CT without contrast. And it showed that he had developed a large intra-abdominal either hematoma or adhesion in his lower right quadrant where the appendectomy was. So when he saw that, because Whitman was in like a 10 out of 10 pain at this point, he went back for surgery again and they tried to drain the abscess and they hit just like coagulation. Like they could not, nothing would come out. So they tried in several places, they couldn't get it. So, I mean, he went back and then they were pretty quickly out, like, I'm sorry, this is just gonna have to go away on its own. At this point, he was having a really hard time controlling his bowels and his urine. He was in excruciating pain. He had developed what I called shakiness. You know, I didn't know what it was at the time, a hand tremor, and he was having a really hard time walking with his right side. He said, I need to speak to you outside of the room. And I said, okay, you have 4 children, right? I said, I do. He said, well, I think the problem we're facing here is that Whitman is attention starved. And that he just needs more attention and you just need to tell him he is better. He needs to go back to normal life. He is going to be just fine, but there's nothing more we can do to help him here. I had no idea what to do. I had never had a medical professional speak to me that way. And it was just a very difficult concept, you know, that I've now seen a lot, but that was the first encounter. And the nurse said, you need to report him. That was completely inappropriate. I have been with Whitman every day that you're here, and he is the most precious patient I've ever had. And he is not faking it. He is not tricking you. You are a good mom. And so that carried on until Christmas Day, and we tried to do a normal Christmas, but it wasn't. And that night, the whole day, it was a really terrible day, really. And then by the end of the day, he was wailing in bed, just crying and couldn't go to the bathroom and couldn't control himself and tremoring, and his eyes were full on nystagmus at this point with any tracking. And so he said he was afraid he was going to die. And so we said, well, we're going to take you to the hospital here. And they start helping him, and the doctor comes in and says, I'm so concerned. What can I do? And I just told her he was still struggling, and now the bowels were not happening. He was having what he said was sharp stabbing pain in his belly in one spot, right where the appendix used to be, which is what we know where the hematoma was. And so he's having this horrible, horrible, horrible pain. And she said, okay, well, I just don't think we're capable of taking care of him. I'm going to call MUSC, and I'm going to request a pediatric transfer immediately by ambulance tonight. We've got to get him where he can get help. So, okay, great. So she comes back in the room with a completely changed demeanor. And she says to me, MUSC refused transfer because they said that you refused a psych evaluation at the hospital. All of this is psychiatric, and they do not need him to come back because there's nothing they can do to help him. After that appointment, that was kind of the last straw with what we were doing that way. We made an appointment with a holistic integrative functional medicine provider who I have a friend who works for him who's a nurse, but she doesn't see peds, and so she got us in with the doctor. And immediately that day he said he has Lyme disease and co-infections. I found Dr. Padgel after searching like Lyme and eye vision issues, and when I found him, we immediately booked with him and went to him, and that was in May of 2022. So yeah, 2.5 years ago. And we flew up to Connecticut and we met him, and he immediately started working with Whitman and got him stabilized and helped him get his foot on the ground a little bit and try to help us we for sure got rid of the wheelchair that week. And he just minimally used the walker after that. Prism glasses to stabilize his system. It helped with all the vertigo as well that was going on. But while we were at Dr. Padgel's office, he kept talking about something called spasms of accommodation. And like, what's a spasm of accommodation? He would say Whitman's eyes, this were spasms of accommodation. His eyes were trying to accommodate what his brain couldn't do. And so he kept talking about it. I kept thinking, wonder if you could have a spasm of accommodation in your belly. You know, are these like belly spasms? Is there something we could do to stabilize that? So I just thought about it a lot, wrote it down, and just tried to be present while we were there. But when we got back home, I started researching abdominal spasms of accommodation. And up popped an article from Boston Children's Hospital that I ended up having to purchase on the Pediatric Surgical Journal to read the whole article. But there's something called ACNES, it's anterior cutaneous nerve entrapment syndrome. And it's where your anterior cutaneous nerves can become entrapped after a surgery, a trauma, or like a large hematoma that would put pressure on the abdominal wall and cause adhesions that would trap the anterior cutaneous nerves. And this was it. I mean, this was exactly Whitman's symptoms. This is 21 months after his surgery. He finally ended up having anterior cutaneous nerve entrapment syndrome surgery, which is called something else. And it took the pain away for 12 weeks. And then it came back because his nerves regenerated. So then he had the surgery again. So after that second surgery, it did take the pain away and it started to creep back up. And we had just gone to a seminar about stem cells. So we made an emergency appointment with the stem cell doctor, took him there, and had stem cells injected into the point of pain. And then it lasted for a year. He had no pain. It crept back a little bit this past May, had more stem cells injected and no pain. It's inflammation, it's adhesions, it's the nerve regeneration, and probably a lot of the Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia stealth infection, like getting in that area and irritating it and not letting it fully heal like you should be able to heal. So the stem cells and exosomes, they just allow the body to heal. When we went back to the doctor and told her, she was like, I still don't believe this. And so she gave us a referral for a psych hospital where he should go spend 3 weeks relearning how to be a person and not call himself sick anymore. And I think that might have been our lowest low, because we were so heartbroken and sick and confused, and she was wrong. Probably watching him play his basketball game last week, just crushing goals, living life, being able to be a kid again, and he still is within limits, but he's just able to be a little person again, and that's the high. That's the everyday kind of high, Just to other parents, like, you fight for your child, you advocate for your child. At the end of the day, you're the provider. You find physicians and NPs and PAs to help you, but you have to handle it yourself. You have to keep good notes. You have to be thoughtful about what you do. You have to plan your encounters, and you have to go outside of your comfort zone, because if you don't, you're just gonna, it wasn't good enough for me that Whitman, just could be alive. I want him to live and live out loud.
My name is Whitman Spires, and I'm 13 years old. I'm going to school, and I'm on the basketball team, so I've gotten so much better, thankfully.
He's walking, he's playing basketball, he's crushing all of his goals, he's strong, he's courageous, he's the same kind of boy he was before he got sick, and he's chronically healing is what I like to call it. We're just on this healing journey. We still have ups and downs, but when we started, we were here, and our new baseline is here, and we want to be here. You know what I mean? So we're just continually working on it. We've finally figured out it's a marathon, not a sprint. Everybody tries to tell you that, but we're like, we're going to defy the odds. We're not going to be that one family that takes forever to heal. They need to know more than anything that you believe them, because if you believe them, they're going to get better.
Don't let your sickness become your identity, and know that things can get better.